Recently, I was scrolling social media and I found this quote by St. Isaac the Syrian around 700 AD. The quote says, "Depression is caused by overstimulation of the mind, which is caused by idleness, vain chatter, or overeating." So 1300 years later, I wanted to test my psychiatric knowledge with this quote to see if there's any scientific basis for this claim that depression is caused by what he says. So first of all, taking overeating. I've already talked about this in several other videos, but the types of foods one eats and the nutrition one has can play an important role in their mental health. Scientific studies have consistently shown that obesity, which is often caused by overeating or being overweight, is more likely to lead to symptoms of depression and anxiety and mental health problems. And not just the obesity, but types of foods ones eat. If people eat more junk food, saturated fats, sugary foods, those are all going to cause more psychological symptoms like anxiety, depression, ADD-like symptoms. So far, there's a lot of scientific basis to say that overeating can cause depression. Next thing that I'm pretty confident about is idleness. Idleness, such as like being lazy or, not doing much, etc. It reminds me of a research study that I reviewed as a resident in which, so the body has this natural stress response, and that's what cortisol is, a natural hormone in the body that's secreted more highly when we wake up in the morning, and it sort of dwindles down over the day. But it's a normal response to stress, and the body responds to stress and needs stress in a way to sort of function optimally. But when the stress is too high or the stress is too low, that equilibrium or the balance that the body likes to have may be out of whack. And so in this case, if there's a lot of idleness or laziness or a lot of downtime, maybe the stress could be too low, and that can lead to depression-like symptoms. It can lead to oversleeping or overeating or something along those lines. And so in that regards, we do know that idleness can be associated with depression. What about this overstimulation of the mind? Now, I had to really kind of look into this a little bit more deeper because just off the top of my head, I wasn't really sure what overstimulation of the mind how could that play a part in depression, other than what it says in the Bible, or anxiety in the heart of man causes depression. I did find that maybe if your people are thinking too much or are worrying too much about things or have a lot of strain on their mental abilities, that can cause a sort of fatigue, feeling drained. Maybe it can cause them to feel helpless or inadequate. This theory about learned helplessness, it started a rat in a maze, and when the rat couldn't find an exit in the maze, they would basically feel helpless, and that would end up mimicking symptoms of depression. So this learned helplessness is like when there's no solution or there's no way out, that can lead to this feeling of depression. So maybe cognitive overload or overthinking or overwhelming one's mind or cognitive abilities can lead to that depression perhaps. Or perhaps this overstimulation can lead to chronic stress. As I mentioned before, that idleness or having stress too low can cause depression. So can stress that's too high. So maybe if someone's overly stimulated, doing too much, thinking too much, maybe that leads to the stress response for too long in the body, and that can lead to not only depression, but also perhaps cardiovascular problems down the road, like heart disease and things like that. Also, overstimulation may impact one's ability to sleep at night. This is especially true of people who are overstimulated by lights. For example, at night, melatonin is secreted at night to help people to sleep. But if there's too much screen time or too much light, that's going to prevent the body from naturally secreting this melatonin, and it might prevent people from sleeping at night. So in that respect, overstimulation could impact sleep, and if sleep's affected, that can impact one's mental health, such as causing depression. And then some other thoughts about how this cognitive overload could cause depression is that it brings up too much noise or too much distractions into one's life, and it doesn't allow them enough time to meditate or sit in stillness or silence and help them to reflect and help with their intentions and stuff like that. So the last part of the quote is vain chatter, and we could kind of reason that vain chatter may be sort of related to either idleness or overstimulation. If you just by having stress that's either too high or too low, or maybe it just leads to negative feelings or negative relationships with others. And so one theory I liked about this topic is that vain chatter might take someone away from God. And God, who is like the source of healing and goodness in one's life, if one is kind of separated from that, that might cause a lot of negative emotions, negative thoughts to come up. And maybe that's how people can sort of get into this depression-like phase. Because when you're separated from God, you're going to be separated from like your purpose, your values, and you're going to lack that meaning in life that really helps to persevere through the difficult times. 1,300 years later, you can see that St. Isaac the Syrian's quote, "Depression is caused by overstimulation of the mind, which is caused by idleness, vain chatter, overeating," does have a lot of scientific support these days.